Welcome to the Game Disc, where every week we wrap up all the biggest gaming news from last week, tell you what to expect this week, and decide the top 100 games of all time. I'm your host, Simon Esty, and I'm joined by...
Noah Esty.
And last week, Final Fantasy Rebirth was a massive failure, and fans are raging at Tekken 8. Then, for our weekly game discussion, we're going to be talking about the Time Crisis series. We will get to all of that, but first, Noah, how are you doing today?
Well, I'm doing okay, nothing too special, but what I want to instead talk about is, Simon, are you familiar with what day it is today?
It's 420, baby.
Yeah, so, how are you celebrating Hitler's birthday?
I am celebrating Hitler's birthday, as you would intend, by taking care of not one German Shepherd, but two German Shepherds. Who are both 16 months old, which for those who don't know, 16 months old for a German Shepherd is when they're in like their rebellious teenage years. So it's been a lot of fun. It's been really stress-free. The dogs aren't trying to attack the two cats I have. They're always super well behaved. It's been such a good day.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it is actually really funny that that's how you're celebrating it, because as I don't know if you know or not, but Hitler actually had two German Shepherds, so you're really going in there, Simon.
I guess so. It's been a day.
Yeah, I mean, well, unfortunately, that's just how things go sometimes. Most people are celebrating 420 with some marijuana. I was gonna be like, is it cool to say marijuana or Mary Jane? No, I'm a loser. I'll just say marijuana, like a narc.
I think most people just say weed.
Yeah, that's how out of touch I am. But regardless, it's you're having fun taking care of two good little boys and girls. Yeah, yes, I'm aware, fan. But
yeah, it's been in some ways worse than I thought, in some ways better. It's just
kind of like going to war with the rest of the world, huh?
Yeah, a little bit. In some ways it's better than you'd expect, in some ways it's worse. No, basically I kind of just toss them outside, they play around for 30 minutes to an hour, get all wiped out, then I bring them inside and like kind of just toss them in the crate, let them recuperate, and then they go back out there. And that's kind of the way the day goes. So, and it's just for tomorrow. Our sister, whose dog it is, said she will be back early tomorrow, but knowing her, it will be closer to the afternoon. Yeah. And I am very excited. But we're not here to talk about two crazy German Shepherds. We are here to talk about video games.
The Nazi party, right?
Sure. One.
Man, we should have picked a Wolfenstein game for today.
Oh,
that would have been perfect. Idea. That would have been perfect, but no, we're not that smart.
The wheel decree to have to be an arcade game. Does Wolfenstein have arcade cabinets?
No,
I didn't think so. Sorry.
It's okay. You can swear. This isn't a children's-friendly podcast. We literally were just talking about Hitler.
That's not why I was almost swearing. I just almost killed everything. Anyway. One thing that is dead.
And you really are trying to celebrate Hitler's birthday, aren't you?
I guess so. One thing that is dead is the sales for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, as it is a colossal failure, and Square Enix will probably never make another Final Fantasy ever again.
They hate
but in
Cloud.
All seriousness, what?
Square Enix, they now hate Cloud. They're like, you know what? This used to be our golden boy. Cloud, you're getting bumped down to at least number 7 or number 6 of our top protagonist. Squall, you're getting into number 1. So, going forward, Squall's going to be Square Enix's golden boy
right now. There are so many better choices than Squall. He's dumb. Anyway, we're not here to talk about 8 because 8's awful. We're here to talk about 7. So some discussion got started earlier this week from a tweet from market analyst Daniel Ahmed, who said that the game has sold half of what Remake has sold in the same time. Kind of following this, a lot of people started talking about it, and the IGN, to kind of corroborate or disprove his statements, did an in-depth investigation which didn't really have a conclusion. But what they did find was that during the month of March, the game was the seventh highest in monthly active users on PSN. However, that did include the demo. With what info we do have, it did look like sales did drop in Japan pretty steeply. And then most other countries don't have sales numbers, so we don't really know how that did. And all of this discussion was also kind of brought about because when Final Fantasy XVI came out last year, in like the first week it sold 3 million copies. Square Enix was very excited to talk about that. But they have said nothing about the sales for Rebirth yet, which is why people think maybe it's not quite as impressive. Despite potentially bad sales, the game is the third game in the series which will complete the trilogy, is still in development and currently aiming for a 2027 release. What do you think about all of this, Noah?
Yeah. So FF16 came out a little less than a year ago, correct?
Yeah, because it came out in June, right? And it's April, so 10 months
Yeah.
ago.
So a couple things. One, while it does include the demo for the game, I think that maybe not a huge amount of people are playing the demo. Demo did come out in February, and so I'm sure a lot of people who are really interested in playing the game already did play the demo. But I think going at for the sales numbers, something that has to be talked about is there are a lot of problems with 16's launch, but something that the main thing people said is Final Fantasy VII Remake was on the PS4, which sold a lot, and it was released at the end of its life cycle when they had a much larger install base. Whereas Final Fantasy 16 was released closer to the PS5's beginning than its end, and so it had a much larger or a much smaller install base. And correct me if I'm wrong, but people found that if you went by percentages, 16 actually like I don't know how to speak right now, but essentially like
I know what you were gonna say.
yeah.
Basically, the number of units. Yeah, because I actually looked into this, and I think I may have brought it up on this podcast. The number of units 16 sold relative to the total number of consoles in circulation was higher, or it was very close to that percentage from Remake, which kind of
Mhm,
led me to believe that 16 sold pretty in line with what we would expect. Um, and you do bring up a couple of good points. It does make
mhm,
sense that Rebirth would sell less than Remake because it is on a console that is a lot less uh,
mhm.
units sold. It's also important
Yep.
to remember Remake came out in March 2020, where there was a certain global event going on where a lot of people were spending money on video games.
Mhm,
And finally, like anytime you've got a sequel that is so dependent on the first one, you're going to get a little bit of a drop off. I haven't started Rebirth yet, but I know, I mean, it is just part
mhm.
two. It is so dependent on part one. I'm sure there were a lot of people who just dropped off.
Yeah.
I think the more interesting game to compare this to as opposed to Remake is 16,
Mhm.
because a lot of people kind of were shitting on 16 like, oh, this is what happens when you move away from turn-based. This game is bad because it's all just side quests.
Mhm.
But it's, I mean, it probably sold better than Rebirth. But another thing to consider is that, again, 16 was a standalone title. People could just pick it up. It probably appealed to people who might not be into Final Fantasy
Mhm.
because it's more of an action system and the game kind of had that Game of
Yeah.
Thrones aesthetic. But
Mhm.
also, we sometimes see games sort of like paying for the sins of its predecessor. Like Guardians of the Galaxy did not sell well because Avengers was bad.
Mhm.
And that's
And
also
it's
something
kind
to
of
consider
yeah,
too.
because 16 was bad, so Rebirth isn't selling well.
Yeah, and personally I love 16. Well, no, but my point is there are people who think 16 are
I
bad. Those people are
no.
wrong, but do you know what I'm saying? Like if you played
No, I
16
get it. It's
and you thought there
yeah.
was too many side quests or whatever, you would just skip Rebirth.
Yeah, that's happens very often with a lot of game series is they make a drastic change, and when they stick to that direction, sales start to go down. I mean, I think that's what happened with Assassin's Creed. It They did Assassin's Creed Origins, which was a new take on the series, and it sold well because people were excited for it, but then they're like, okay, this really isn't what I'm interested for. And then for that reason, Odyssey and Valhalla didn't sell as great. But no, I completely agree. It's like, I think that this is something about 1616. The thing that made me really excited about 16 was the presentation, it was the art style. It really seemed like they were like, this is the Western perception of Final Fantasy. Let's try to change it. I mean, second week in a row of referencing Video Game Donkey, but I thought the quote he said about it is, for the first time in my life, I would not be embarrassed to be a Final Fantasy fan after the trailer for 16, just because it really did it seemed awesome. It seemed badass and sweet. Whereas 7, as good as a game as it is, there is still that JRPG perception. Like, it's not fun modern anime like Persona is. It's the annoying anime of like the 2000s or 90s, although now people like 90s
Uh
anime.
yeah, but Final Fantasy VII wasn't really seen that at the time. Like Final Fantasy VII was the PlayStation game.
Mhm.
It wasn't
But
like
yeah.
it wasn't like this niche thing. This was a game that
Mhm.
was like everywhere. So
Yeah.
I get what you're saying.
Mhm.
People probably did outgrow it, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's still Final Fantasy VII. I bet there are just as many kind of like people who don't generally play JRPGs who picked up 7 out of nostalgia as there were 16 who picked it up because it looked like Game of Thrones.
I I don't know. I'm
Maybe
not
not
gonna make
Rebirth, but
I
probably
mean,
remake.
I think there are a lot of people who really tie it to, like, Kingdom Hearts, though, because there are a lot of people that now, they didn't experience 7, but they experienced Kingdom Hearts, and so it's kind of they view it in a similar manner, and so I think that that's also a reason why, like, 7 might not have it. I'm Of
I don't
course,
know if I agree with that.
I think I would agree with it.
I think most people who are going to associate Final Fantasy VII with Kingdom Hearts are probably still somewhat into JRPGs anyway.
I think that, yeah.
Because if you, because I guess the way I see it, if you if you were playing Kingdom Hearts as some like normie kid who
Mhm.
was kind of only playing it because of Disney, you wouldn't
Yeah.
even know that Cloud was from Final Fantasy VII
Yeah.
unless you went out and searched him out, which you would only do if you were this hardcore Kingdom Hearts fan. I feel like if you were the type of person to play Kingdom Hearts and like get that into it,
Mm.
that then you went to go seek out where Cloud was from,
See,
you were probably somewhat into Final Fantasy after that. I don't see
I
somebody like loving Kingdom Hearts and being like, "Oh, Cloud's from Final Fantasy, that's badass." But I just want to play this to see Goofy
I have to disagree because I think that there are people that, like, they didn't really grow up with it, and so eventually
grow
when
up
they
with what
learned
Final
it,
Fantasy or Kingdom Hearts.
Final Fantasy VII,
Okay.
and so they kind of, because their first exposure to it was Kingdom Hearts, and then maybe they grew up and weren't really into Kingdom Hearts as much, like, Final Fantasy VII was kind of so closely tied to it. And I mean, I think that's why I'm not super interested in the Final Fantasy VII stuff. It's like I've said before, Final Fantasy VII seems like a game that I would probably enjoy much more than I would expect to, but I unfortunately just don't have a major interest in it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we really have no way of knowing. I think
No.
that you and I are comparing two different age groups. You are comparing people from your age group. I'm
Yeah.
comparing people to mine.
Yeah. Hmm.
So
And we're
maybe
not even
that's
getting involved in the Japanese aspect. My girlfriend, when she found out you didn't like Kingdom Hearts, she was like, "Wait, there are people that don't like Kingdom Hearts?"
look. I don't hate Kingdom Hearts. I just uh, it's just not very good. It's not even that it's bad. It's just like it's a 40-hour JRPG, but instead of having like a cool through line throughout the whole game, it's just Disney movies where you already know what happens. Like,
Yeah.
I bet
Well,
if you cut out all the Disney bullshit from Kingdom Hearts and it was just the Kingdom Hearts bullshit, which is admittedly an awful lot of bullshit, I would actually probably like the game.
well, isn't that what they're planning on doing? They're trying to cut out the Disney aspect of Kingdom Hearts more. Didn't they announce like that was something they're going to do going forward?
I don't think they like explicitly announced it. People just think so because it's probably getting really expensive to keep buying Mickey Mouse,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
the bit we've seen from Kingdom Hearts 4 is just it's just like in Shibuya,
Yeah.
and there's no. I think there was a Donald. I don't know
Yeah.
this, but we're kind of going off topic,
Hmm.
and I am buying time because I have a
Hmm.
hiccup in my throat. But
And you're
regardless, I'm sure Square Enix is somewhat disappointed in the sales for Final Fantasy Rebirth, because if they weren't disappointed, then they would have announced it. Other people who are disappointed are Tekken fans who are starting to be disappointed after Tekken 8. Um, Noah, you actually put this on there, so I could just
yeah.
read the notes you put, but I
No,
feel
I'll
like
I'll
that's not a
I'll
good
talk about it.
idea.
I'll talk about it. Yeah. So, but pretty much Tekken 8 came out and it was widely applauded when it first came out. Everybody loved it. Everybody had a great time. And the interesting thing was that people were comparing it to Street Fighter 6 that came out like last year, and they were pretty much saying like, yeah, Street Fighter 6 has a ton of problems. Tekken, however, doesn't have these problems. But now it seems like they've been doing some shady stuff, and people are actually kind of like, you know what, I think I'm going to go back to Street Fighter. So, one of the biggest things that Tekken has been doing is they've been shutting down mods and they've been really going after mods. And when they first started, the big thing was they were going after mods for Eddie Gordo. Eddie Gordo is the first DLC character, so it makes sense. But then they really started going after more. Something that was also pretty big, high profile was there's like Elden Ring mods, and they took those down and they said that it was because they wanted to make sure people didn't confuse mods with like the actual game. And I believe that they also issued a takedown to a website called tekkenmods.com, and pretty much saying the same reason, we don't want people to associate your website and think that this is an official part of Bandai Namco. And Tekken 8 mods or Tekken mods, they actually issued a response that was like, we make it very clear on our website that we are not in affiliation with Bandai Namco, and we actually don't think that what you are doing is legal. And so it seems like they're kind of going to try to fight them for the mods, and that's it's something that a lot of people are just kind of getting disappointed by. They're like, there are a lot of rage quitters, there's a lot of cheaters in Tekken 8, and it seems like Bandai Namco's not really doing much about it. Plus, they also, a month after the game came out, they introduced a battle pass and some costumes for a pretty high amount that people are getting disappointed in. So, yeah, what are your thoughts on this, Simon? Usually you're the one telling me that. What are your thoughts on this?
Um, I mean, yeah, there's no. I feel like if you are a company or publisher of a fighting game, there's no better way to kill your game than by pissing off the community.
Yeah.
Fighting games live or die by their community. So if you've got a
Hmm.
pissed off community, good luck having your game be long running. I mean, I was never super interested in. Well, that's a lie. I'm interested in Tekken from a story standpoint, just because it's so bonkers, I
Mhm.
wouldn't mind like picking it up for like $20 just to play through the campaign.
Mhm.
But I picked up Street Fighter 6 last year, and that's kind of the fighting game that if I really want to get into a fighting game, it's going to be Street Fighter.
Mhm.
So this doesn't really affect me, but I know that I I don't I don't necessarily blame these people who are making these mods and things for getting pissed off at Bandai Namco. As far as like the cheating and like rage quitters,
Yeah.
I don't know what you do with that. I guess you just crack down, but and you
Mhm.
would think that they would be doing that, and maybe uh, people also need to remember that this is that Tekken 8. If I'm remembering correctly, and if I'm not knowing, you can correct me. This is the
Yeah.
game where they say they have rollback, but it doesn't actually. It's
I
like
actually
it's
am not familiar with that.
so it's
Um,
so they basically came out and said, "Oh yeah, it
I
has
wouldn't be
rollback."
surprised.
And it's not like they're doing false advertising. The director just didn't really understand what rollback actually was. So they have
Mhm.
like a some like different sort of netcode that works better than whatever is used usually, but it's not as good as people were actually really worried before it came out that it wouldn't be as good as rollback. And it's I don't know if it is, but and
Okay.
all this to just kind of say like this is the
Um,
as far as cheating. Oh, go ahead. Did you look it up?
yeah, so I'm looking it up. So pretty much if according to an article by Destructoids, Eric Van Allen, it seems like the game has, when you go to rollback settings, prioritize fluidity is the like automatic response, and prioritized response is what it should be, which prioritize fluidity makes it look nicer, but prioritized response makes the game actually run better. So
Yeah,
that's what it seems
and
like is the
even
problem.
then, I don't know if it's like a full rollback type of thing. Again,
Hmm.
I could be wrong, but my point is, this is a company who just doesn't. I don't know if they really understood rollback.
Hmm.
So to get them to have the technical like know how to identify and ban like bad actors as opposed
Yeah.
to people who are just having fun like modding, I
Hmm.
don't know if they truly have like the technical capability. And not that that's an excuse. They
No.
should. It's Bandai Namco. They're a big company.
Yeah.
They should, if they're going to launch a game like this, they should have those people. But my guess is that's what's happening here.
Yeah, and something that is also true is something that YouTuber Maximilian Dude said that made a good point is when the game disconnects, it's really hard to tell when somebody rage quits, it's really hard to tell who did it because all the game knows is, "Oh, a giant problem occurred. Now that's we can't have this fight." So it is really difficult to punish rage quitters for that reason, just because it's hard to find out who they were. And going back to it, I'm not sure if it is if the game doesn't have true rollback. I know Harada is famous for his "don't ask me for shit" personality. That's won him a lot of fans, but during a fighting game like developer conference, everybody was kind of skirting around like rollback because this was when the Guilty Gear Strive beta came out and it was a huge success. And Harada kind of he didn't shit on rollback, but it seemed like he was like, yeah, people are making too big of a deal about rollback. It's really not that big of a deal. But yeah, I think that the thing that I want to talk about really though with this, which is funny because we just talked about a lot of the other things, is the implementation of the store 1 month after the game came out. And I think that the reason I want to talk about this is because this is something that I feel like is becoming far too common in games lately. Like, it's essentially a company makes a game, they're like, here's our game, we made it, and they know it's good. And people buy it, they play it, it gets good reviews, and they say the game is good. And then, like, a month or so later, they start just changing shit up that people are like, this game is not fun anymore. Like, Diablo 4 was the biggest example. Everybody loved it when the game first came out, but then they massively like changed a lot of the end game content. So people were like, this is not what I expected. Dragon's Dogma 2 was also pretty recently. People were surprised because it seemed like there were microtransactions in the game. And I know Street Fighter 6 as well has like a store. I don't know if they announced ahead of time they would, but I know that once costumes started coming out, people were like, this is insanely priced. So it's unfortunate that it seems like a lot of game devs are getting really comfortable with, oh, we'll just implement microtransactions a month after the game came out. We'll get all of our sales, people will have it, and then we'll start nickel and diming players instead of just being upfront about it.
Yeah, which I don't. I've got two minds about this. For one,
Mhm.
one thing I want to clarify is you said
Yeah.
devs. I don't think this is coming from the devs. I
Oh,
think this is
yeah,
coming
my
from the
bad. I'm sorry.
publishers.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Yes.
what I do want to mention is I understand the thought of like the frustration by spending $70 and not feeling like you're getting a full product,
Mhm.
especially in an age when games can ship pretty broken.
Mhm.
The caveat to that is if you bought Dragon's Dogma 2
Mhm.
and you had fun with it for those 2 days where there weren't microtransactions, and then the microtransactions came and ruined your experience, like, I'm sorry, that sucks. But if you can, but that game hasn't changed from those 2 days that you bought it and played it.
Mhm.
There's just now something else on top of that.
Mhm.
It's like if you went to go see a movie in the theaters and then like a week later they came out with an extended cut. Yeah, you might feel like frustrated because you wish you would have waited, but if you still liked the movie, you still like the movie. And don't let if you're having fun with a game, don't let like a publisher's attempts to get more money from you get in the way of that. From I haven't played it yet, but from what I've heard, like Dragon's Dogma 2 is a really good game. Street Fighter
Mhm.
2 or Street Fighter 6 is a really good
Well,
game.
Street Fighter 2 is a really good game. It's
Street
one of the
Fighter 2
top
is a really
100
good
games of it's one of the top 100 games of all time.
yeah. But my point just being, don't let that ruin your experience. There could always be more. They could come out with a sequel that doesn't change your experience with
Mhm.
the first game, even if it's not the full story. And people kind of said this with going back to Final Fantasy. Oh,
Mhm.
they're breaking up the game. You're only getting a third of it. I mean, I paid $60 for 40 hours, and it was a lot of
Yeah.
fun. And I didn't mind paying 70 for 100 more. On the
Yeah.
other hand, and something else kind of I want to
Mhm.
mention, like I said, I get that it's frustrating. I get that it's annoying.
Yeah.
Games, I know a lot of people don't like the games are $70 now.
Mhm.
Games were $50 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Like that's it's like a 30% increase, which is a lot.
Mhm.
But my order from Taco Bell has gone up like 400 times. And again, I'm not saying that this is
And I eat a
okay.
lot of Taco Bell, so it's really stacking up.
No, like I'm serious. Like I used to get like two chicken burritos and a cheesy nacho. The burritos were $1 each, and the cheesy nachos were 69 cents. It was
Yeah.
$2.69. Now, if I were to get those, it'd be $9. It's literally 300
Mhm.
times more expensive. And again,
Yeah.
my point to all of this is like, and again, I get that it's
Mhm.
frustrating.
Yeah.
These devs have to make money some way. We are seeing what is happening
Mhm.
when they're not making enough money. We're seeing all these layoffs. Like this is what we're talking about every week, and the solution is not like if this is what like games have to do to stay in business. Okay,
Mhm.
I think this is a good middle ground. If you don't want to buy the extra costumes, then don't. You still have your purchase that you made that is a good experience. Is it the top of the line best experience? No, and that's okay. Just have fun with what you have. The real solution is to make games smaller. But
Yeah.
that will
And
not happen. But
and for me, my big thing is I honestly don't hate microtransactions too much. I acknowledge that like there's a reason they're there. The thing that I really don't like is when devs don't disclose that there will be just because then that way it makes it feel like, oh, well, now we can't trust you, which will then end up hurting devs in the long run. I remember when Diablo 4 came out, like a lot of people were really angry about like all the changes Blizzard made a month after the game released. And I was like, why are you surprised? It's Blizzard. And so that's the thing that I think is just sad is it's the feeling of being betrayed. Like it's like, hey, now we're gonna have these things. And that's the thing that really disappoints me about it.
Yeah, and I could see that, but at the end of the day,
And
they didn't
also keep
promise it.
yeah, and also but keep in mind at the same time, Helldivers 2. Helldivers 2, they have microtransactions given it's a $40 game instead of 70. They have microtransactions upfront about it. People love Helldivers.
Well,
It's
but that's like saying Fortnite has microtransact. Like, there's a difference. If you go in,
yeah,
there's no live service game that
yeah.
doesn't have microtransactions.
Uh-huh.
But I
Exactly,
think,
but that's my point though. Like they're upfront about it so people aren't as angry. It's the fact that they're not being they weren't upfront about it and then a month later after you buy the game it's all right, here's the microtransactions. You know
which
what I mean?
I get that it's frustrating, but it doesn't change the product you bought.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, it just, you know, if people want to be really upset about it, they're entitled to their emotions.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, if you bought Dragon's Dogma 2, that experience you bought, microtransactions or no, that was what you agreed to sign up for.
Mhm.
Microtransactions don't change it. They came out with an expansion fast for Persona, which people are also
Uh-huh.
mad about,
Yeah.
but you went in knowing that it didn't have that expansion pass.
Mhm.
The game you
Yeah.
bought, it doesn't change because they've now announced it.
Yeah, but
You made a decision to put your money down for a product,
mhm.
and if it doesn't meet your expectations in some way,
Mhm.
that's fine. But them adding additional content doesn't change what you signed up for when you bought it. And also, contrary to popular belief, devs who are making microtransactions are still working, and you are not entitled to that for free because you paid for
Mhm.
some of your work. Imagine if, back to the movie example, you went to go
Mhm.
see Oppenheimer in theaters. So now you want Christopher Nolan's next film for free.
Mhm.
That's not the
Uh
way it works.
I have to disagree with that because I feel like it is that's different. That's like buying a game and then saying, "Well, I should get the sequel to for free."
Okay, that's fair. That's
Nobody's
an extreme
saying,
example. But
"Yeah, my like I said, for me, it's just the fact that they didn't disclose it, which that's the thing I don't
so
like.
what if they did disclose it?
Then at least that way it's like, okay, yeah, well, that's what we're doing. Like that's just the way it is. But the fact that they're not disclosing it makes it feel like they're like, we know people don't like this, so we're not going to tell people we're going to do it. Then when they buy our product and like it, then we're going to hit them with it. And it's like just be upfront about it. Like people will
Welcome
complain, but they're
to people complaining about that. Welcome to literally every single product that has come out in the last 20 years. I'm serious.
yeah.
Like Netflix, Hulu, all those subscription services raised their prices once they got
Yeah.
a nice basket of people. That is,
Yeah.
I understand it, but yeah, there are people who straight up wouldn't buy it.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
so I- so
So
if
if they're
I,
not gonna if they're not gonna buy it because of the microtransactions, then that's you could say that they're being deceptive.
but you could also argue then you're punishing the devs for the publisher's calls, because
I
I
think that
guarantee
that's
it's not the devs who are deciding to put these in. So the devs make a great product, but
uh-huh.
because publishers want to bring more money out of it, the devs are the ones who then their studio closes and then they are laid off. And congratulations, you now have less good games in the world because
See,
you wanted to know that you could pay $1 for a blue skin.
but at the same time though, it's kind of like the tipping thing. Like that argument isn't a bad one, but I feel like it's also like the tipping argument where it's like the argument people say about tipping, which people are now really starting to be more critical of, is they say, well, you don't have to tip if you don't want to, but that waiter is now going to be making less of a living wage, so it compels you to tip. Meanwhile, the owner is the one who is doing the shady practice, and they're the ones getting away with it. So it's like, I understand that argument, but I also feel like it's one of those things where it's like, so you have to reward the publishers in order to look out for the developers. It's kind of like a same thing for in my opinion. It's like, so in order to look out for the servers, you need to reward the owners for their
But that's not.
practice.
But that's not what it is. You know what the answer to this is.
Make cheaper
Buy,
games.
well, it's not only is it make cheaper games, it's buy your Dragon's Dogma 2, and then when they come out with microtransactions, don't fucking buy them.
Mm-hmm. Or and
Like,
then go on to post reviews like, yeah, this game has microtransactions now. Wouldn't
yeah,
recommend
or
it.
that's too. Which if I would, well, I mean, we're kind of getting off topic. I would
Yeah.
never, if I saw a game that seemed really fun, but I could pay $3 to have my character run around in a purple armor instead of the normal default gray, that would not deter me from buying a game. And if that would deter you from buying a game, more power to you. But that is wild to me. It's one thing, like pay to win type of thing. It's another for it's purely cosmetic. It doesn't matter. Just play games you enjoy, and like I said, the way you support microtransactions is not by buying games with microtransactions. It's by buying microtransactions. So don't do it. Because if you do not buy games, they will get shut down. Much like Little Big Planet 3 servers got shut down. So Sony confirmed that Little Big Planet 3's servers will be shut down indefinitely. They did originally shut down in January. Sony stated that due to technical issues that are ongoing, they basically can't get them back up and running. They have no idea when they will be able to, so they are just shut down indefinitely. This means that all user-generated levels are lost until they come back online, which at this point seems very unlikely. But locally saved levels are still available. What do you think about this one?
I mean, it sucks. I think that this is one of those things where it's always disappointing because you always want to go back to the games, play them, especially if you put in a lot of hard work to make the levels, which I'm sure a lot of people did. I remember you once tried to make like a Little Big Planet level, and you're
Oh, it
like,
was a
wow,
nightmare.
this is exactly. It was much more work than you expected. So the fact that people were able to create these like masterpieces with them, it's insane. And I think that it's really sad. They definitely should have sent a memo out being like, hey, make sure to locally save like any levels that you would like. But at the same time, the servers do cost money, and they gotta make that money. They gotta make the money for servers for the next game. Like the extra Helldivers 2 servers, they're not gonna pay for the. Well, actually, they might pay for themselves, but the Little Big Planet 3 servers aren't paying for themselves. So that's what they have to do. It's kind of like the Super Mario Maker thing that we talked about. It's sad, but unfortunately, that's an inevitability.
Yeah, I agree. I think the solution is to give enough
Thank
advance
God we
notice.
agree on this.
Yeah. I think the solution is to just give people enough heads up so they can download any levels they made or any levels they loved and want to keep locally. I also wish there was a way that they could just like save the levels as a file and then people could just like post them on Reddit and download them some way, but I guess then they'd still have to be stored on this some kind of server somewhere. But
Plus, then you have to go onto Reddit.
I guess that's true.
Yeah.
So yeah. All right. Nothing else to say about Little Big Planet.
No.
Do you want to do our feel good story of the week? Or do you want me to do it?
If you'd like to, you can do it and I'll add in.
Okay. So, A 26-year-old speedrun of Doom 2 was beaten last week. This was for Entryway, which is the first level of the game. It was originally completed 26 years ago in 5 seconds. One thing to note is that the way the speedruns in Doom 2 work is that it only counts like the whole second. So it actually took Thomas Pilger 5.97 seconds to beat this level, but they only count it as 5 because they only count the whole number. They don't round up, they round down to the whole second.
Yeah.
However, a user named 4shockblast has completed it in 4 seconds. He primarily used a technique called thing running, where he's basically able to bounce himself off of enemies to round the corner, since, again, this whole level is pretty short. And that was able to get him under that 5-second mark, which means he now holds a speed run for the first level in Doom 2, which most people thought was impossible. Because it is such a short level, there's like really no room for like optimization or anything like that. So was there anything you wanted to add to that?
Oh yeah, there's a lot I want to add actually. So a lot of the information I get comes from Carl Jobs' phenomenal video about it. Go check it out. And so a couple things to note. When people were speedrunning this game, they often were turning off enemies. So the level is essentially a straight line with about like 3 turns. And so a lot of people are like, I just want to do it fast, so I'm not going to include the enemies. I'm going to delete them, and then I'll just do it to practice my movement. And that was actually mostly done by, like, deathmatch players just trying to, like, show off their speed that they do in online play. And so that was a major contributor for why people thought it was impossible. And the aspect of thing running is essentially when you collide with an object or like you run past an object, it uses like the momentum of doing that to speed up your character. It's because it's in the game. Like that's just how the game was programmed, fan. Anyway, so like for example, there's a level where you can what is it? Thing run? Is that what it's called?
Thing running.
Yeah, thing running like past some barrels and you can actually clear a gap that you can't normally do it. And so people knew you could thing run with enemies, but it was something that people thought you couldn't really do without like a tool assist because you have to hit them at just the right angle and without them attacking you. So the fact that Shock Blast, whom people are actually starting to consider one of the greatest of all time for Doom speedrunning because he has like a shit ton of records, especially like on this level, if I'm not mistaken, and in Doom 1's first level too, if I'm not mistaken as well. He was able to hit all of the enemies at the right way to make them not attack him, but also to use their momentum to boost him up. So it's really insane. Like I said, Carl Jobs made a phenomenal video talking about the history and breaking down how he was able to do it. So I highly recommend if you want to learn more information about this.
Cool. That does sound kind of interesting. I might have to check it out.
Yeah.
All right, so that wraps up the news.
Mm-hmm.
We've got, of course, conventions coming up this weekend. We've got KazaCon from April 26th to 28th at the Beckley, West Virginia. We've got
Beck's gonna be there?
No, it's in Beck.
It's inside of him, so he's not gonna be there. He's gonna be the convention.
He is the convention, yeah.
Oh God, I love Beck. That seems like something Beck would do.
He is. He is doing it. Classic Beck. There's a Magicon from April 26th to 28th in Minot, North Dakota.
Not a convention. You just show up in an empty lot and then just imagine everything.
There's a convention there. Uh, you're gonna like the
Yeah,
next
there
one
is a
too.
convention, but the quality of the convention depends on your mind.
Uh, Playing off that, the next one is LAN All Night from April 26th to 28 in Grapevine, Texas,
Ugh,
which is
I
just people in their home.
yeah, it's one of those work from home conventions. It's
Exactly. It's the cheapest convention to put on. They just used the servers that they got from Sony after they didn't need them for Little Big Planet
shut down
3.
a little bit. Oh,
uh,
LandCon
and there's
never
Level Up
change.
Expo from April 26th to 28th in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Better than last year's because they actually decided to level up the production this time.
Yep. There's
What if they
Lobocon.
actually like had to? What if they actually lost money, so they had to downgrade a lot of things? Called it level down con.
That would have been pretty good if they were just
Yeah.
honest about it. Um, Lobocon, April 27th in Rohnert Park, California.
Celebrating all things with the DC superhero Lobo.
God, I'd hate that. I'd hate that convention. I'd hate the people who were there more.
Well, the funny thing is, you would have like it would all be dedicated to Lobo, but then you'd have like a corner or a little section dedicated to the new 52 version.
And
There,
it would just be like a pinata.
there'd be like a gaming section, and it's you can play Injustice Gods Among Us, but you can only play as Lobo. It's only Lobo mirror matches.
No, you have to play as Lobo, but like it's handicapped, so he's impossible to die, and you can't play against anybody else. You have to just play against the CPU at like level 1. That seems like something Lobo fans would do. And then there's
Yeah.
Toho Fest, April 27th to 28th in Torrance, California.
Celebrating all things about Toho, which did you know Toho Films actually has an amusement park in Japan?
I didn't. Does it have like
Yeah.
Godzilla stuff?
Yeah, it's not a big amusement park. It's actually really small. It's the big thing about it is there's
Oh,
a
I do remember this actually.
yeah,
I remember
the
seeing
like
the picture of Godzilla.
yeah, and so the big thing about it is there are like a I can't remember what it's called. I think it's called like Toho Koen Amusement Park or Amusement Center, something like that. But the big thing about it was there's a set that is like supposed to look like a what's it called? Like a I don't know what it is, what specific era it is, but essentially like a feudal Japan style town. And yeah, it's pretty cool. I went there. Not the biggest amusement park, but yeah, it was cool.
Cool.
Yep.
All right, so that is all of our conventions, and then we've got games coming out this week. We've got Iodine Chronicles 100 Heroes for the PC, Switch, PS4,
Oh,
PS5,
my bad. It was
Xbox One.
Toei. It wasn't Toho. It was Toei. My bad. Oh, all right. My bad. I remember there was a.
I
Okay, my
did know
bad.
there
Yep.
was a Toei park.
Okay.
There's
Yep. My bad.
Iodine Chronicles 100 Heroes for PC, Switch, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, which is coming out April 23rd. Also on April 23rd, we have Tales of Kenzera Zao for the Switch, PC, PS5, Xbox Series X and S. On April 25th, we have another Crab's Treasure for PC, Switch, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S. We've also got Saga Emerald Beyond for PC and Bootleg Streamer also for PC. And then on April 26th, we've got Stellar Blade for PS5,
Aww.
Sandland for PC, PS4, PS5, Xbox Series X and S, Manor Lords for PC, Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba Sweep the Board for the Switch, Topspin 2K25 for PC, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, and finally on April 30th we have Sea of Thieves coming to PS5. That's a big week.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited for Stellar Blade.
That'll be fine. All right.
Rest in peace, Stella. She
Yes.
was such a good girl.
Yeah, she was right.
Yeah, well, she was high tier. She was the best dog in the world.
Okay. All right. Let's get into our weekly game discussion, which It's gonna be. I don't know how it's gonna go. We will be talking about the Time Crisis series. As the wheel decreed, we would have to talk about an arcade game, and because they kind of all lump together, we're just going to be talking about Time Crisis in general.
Mhm.
Since I think you and I probably have the most experience with Time Crisis 3, that's probably the one we're going to talk the most about. So before
Yeah.
we get too deep into discussion, what do you like? What do you dislike? Spoiler free, or who would you recommend it to? Spoiler free. Very quickly, very briefly. Go.
What I like is it is one of the greatest arcade games of all time. What I don't like is every time you die, you need to put in money into the game to continue. Speaking of microtransactions, and I would recommend it to anybody that wants to play an on-rail shooter and has access to an arcade that has the game.
Yeah,
What about you, Simon?
I think those are pretty good likes, dislikes, and recommendations.
Hmm.
To add on to that, I do like the pedal. I think it offers a little
Yeah,
bit more, I guess, like I
unique.
don't know what
It's unique.
uniqueness, yeah, and
Mhm.
a little bit like not diversity, but I guess diversity in terms of gameplay.
Yeah,
What's the term for that?
gimmick. A gimmick.
No,
I mean, it
like
is a gimmick.
I
It's a good
guess.
gimmick, but it is a gimmick.
I guess, yeah. What I don't like, if you are in the crouch position, it's sometimes hard to tell if there's a bullet, so you'll get out only to immediately get hit. And
Hmm.
who would I recommend it to? Yeah, anybody in an arcade that has Time Crisis. I think it's probably the one that you should play before anything else.
Yeah,
So all that being said, we're going to go into spoilers. Maybe I don't know if I could even tell you a spoiler from Time Crisis if I had to. Um,
yeah, and
but
it's a
if you care
shame
about
because
that, then I guess we'll see you next week.
yeah, and it's one of those things where Time Crisis. It's one of those games where there was bad when they had bad voice acting, but because it was an arcade game, it didn't quite take. There are no Time Crisis memes, unfortunately, and I think that's the tragedy of the situation. But regardless, should we talk about Time Crisis? Start from the beginning and then just kind of go through all of them.
I mean, I truly can only talk about like two, three, and five. Is five
All
the
right.
newest one?
Yes.
I could, and even then, they're all gonna kind of blur together. I remember as a kid liking three more than two,
Hmm.
but outside of that, like I really will probably not be able to talk about one, two, or four.
Yeah. So one, real quick, one was the innovator. It was, of course. Actually, should we talk about the gameplay for Time Crisis before we start like mentioning
Yeah, I mean,
anything else about it?
I think most people know what Time Crisis is, but I
I
guess
don't know, Simon. There are a lot of kids who've never been to an arcade before. They're like, all I know is Fortnite and Floss and Valorant and Rocket League. What's this
I
on-rail
guarantee they
shooters?
are
Is that
not
like when you get? Is
they're
an
not
on-rail
listening to this
shooter when you
podcast.
are playing Minecraft and you modded a gun so you use the minecart and then you shoot? Is that an on-rail shooter? No. So anyway, um, for those of you who don't know, Time Crisis was a on-rail shooter game that separated itself from others by having a kick pedal. So, whereas most on-rail shooters, it's a camera, you have your little light gun, and it puts you into a scene, and enemies appear, and you shoot at them. Time Crisis was different because your character would always be behind cover, and then when you pressed on the kick pedal, you would pop out of cover. So instead of just find enemy and shoot them, you had to like dip in and out of the cover system because an enemy's firing that's gonna hit me. It gotta get into cover. All right, I sure the bullet passed. Get out of cover and you shoot. And because hypothetically you could have stayed in cover the entire game, there was a time limit. So if you didn't clear the little section within the time limit, then you would lose health. And of course, you still had to dodge enemy bullets as well. That was another way to get. it. So Time Crisis 1 was a single player game, and it was a success, but it really didn't get popular until Time Crisis 2, because that was when they introduced a two-player mode. So there were versions of Time Crisis 2 that was like one cabinet and oh wait, never mind. No, it's not my bad. No, there wasn't one of those. There's essentially it was like two cabinets in one, and yeah, that way like you'd be on one side, your partner would be on the other side. But the cool thing about it is your characters wouldn't always be in the same location like other Unreal shooters. So for that reason, there were sections where you guys would both go different ways and it would be like the same scene, but you were in different location. So if you both popped out of cover at the same time, you could actually see the other player as well. And the cool thing is like if you killed all your guys but your partner still had some, you could also shoot at the guys who are targeting your partner instead of you.
Yeah, it just kind
And
of it offered another vantage point, and it offered like a slight level of strategy to a series that really was just point at the screen and click as fast as you can.
yeah, plus it also added replayability as well because it's like, oh, I'll go on this side now. And I don't know if it was the first, but it was definitely like the only light gun game I really can think of where they put a lot of attention into the gun. So like when you fired, the gun would actually like shake and the slide would like fly back. I think that may have been for more like expensive releases and not all of them, but
Yeah, I
I
don't
thought
think
that
that
was a
was all
really
of
cool
them.
feature. Yeah, I thought that was a really sweet feature. So yeah, and Time Crisis 3, Simon, would you like to talk about Time Crisis 3 since I talked about a lot of them already?
I mean, you kind of said everything. I mean, that is one thing about arcade games. They generally don't switch from, I guess, like entry to entry.
hmm
Um, I mean, I do think Time Crisis 3 is probably.
Well,
eh,
Time Crisis 3 introduced another gameplay mechanic: the ability to switch weapons.
I didn't realize that was in 3 because 3 was the one I played the most.
Yeah,
Um,
so
so I
that
mean, and that's
was.
kind of what I was gonna say. Like, I I couldn't tell you individual things about the games because to me they
Mhm,
all kind of just blur together. Um, but as far as the mechanics go, like you said, the pedal kind of giving a different, basically a different tool that Lycan games never had at that point, but also the co-op,
mhm,
um, and kind of the strategy that you could incorporate into the co-op, I think is what really actually sets Time Crisis apart, as opposed to, well, then in Time Crisis 3 they did this, and then in 4 they did this,
mhm,
um, and then 5 I guess did kind of one other change that I can talk about, but
yeah. So, would you like to talk about it?
no, we can talk about the weapons in 3 first.
Yeah. So in most arcade games, your light gun games, you would have a handgun, and then sometimes you would find power up. So it'd be like, oh, I got the machine gun or I got the flamethrower. So what Time Crisis 3 actually did was you always had four weapons. You had the handgun, you had the shotgun, the machine gun, and then you had the grenade launcher. And they all had a certain amount of ammo. Grenade launcher had like two grenades, then machine gun and shotgun, they had a limited amount of ammo. And the handgun had unlimited ammo. You, of course, still had to reload, which you do in these games by just getting back into cover. And that was the way they kind of dealt with power-ups, was you have this, but you only have a limited amount of ammo. If you kill certain enemies, you'll get more, but your handgun's going to be the main weapon. And yeah, and that I thought that was a really unique way um of introducing power-ups, because Time
Yeah,
Crisis never had them.
no, I agree, and it also let you again, kind of like what we talked about, let you take into account different ways to approach combat.
hmm
Do you save your different weapons for a stronger enemy, or
Yep.
do you kind of need them to just get through these smaller waves?
hmm
Um, or do you switch off with your partner where maybe you blow through all your stuff to get to the waves and then he focuses on his specials for the boss? So
Hmm. Yeah. And then Time Crisis 4 was very similar to 3. And then they introduced a new enemy type that was like these bug things. And something that was kind of interesting in then was it actually used the power ups. It was like, hey, use this weapon to deal with these enemies. So like there were these flying ones and they recommended to use the shotgun. And then there's like these little like bug thing ones that were like termites kind of. It was like use the machine gun for these ones. And there also were sections in 4 that were like we're surrounded, and so you still had cover, but you would like have one part of the screen, and so you would move your gun to one side, and then the screen would move to like a different scene. So it was like there's enemies attacking from like 2 or 3 sides, and yeah, you would have to like clear them that way. And then 5, the main gimmick was they got two pedals, so you would press one pedal and you would switch to a different position in cover, like you switch to a different cover. And so you could actually, instead of just being behind one thing, you would be behind like multiple things. Yeah.
yeah, I mean that's
And
pretty
so,
much it. That's Time
yep,
Crisis.
that is the gameplay for Time Crisis.
I mean
So,
that's just and that's the series in general. You know, that's it. I mean, plot, uh, kind of inconsequential.
it's a on-rail shooter. I mean, the fact that it had a plot and cutscenes was pretty unique for that genre.
Yeah, same with like I mean the music. I think the music's maybe good, but it was always in a loud arcade, so I really couldn't
Yeah.
tell you much about it.
Hmm.
Um, I think the big thing that makes Time Crisis stand apart is it is probably the best light gun game.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that there were there were other light gun games that were also decided to play with the formula. Ghost Squad comes to mind, whereas that one it was like you would have little like mini games kind of, and you would also like choose which path you wanted to take. But I feel like Time Crisis was the one that really was, hey, what makes like a light gun game? How can we make it stand out from all of the other ones? And I think that was it was something that was in an otherwise pretty stale genre makes it stand out and actually makes it so it's not like most light gun games. You play one, you essentially play them all. I really like
Yeah,
House of the Dead, but even so, House of the Dead has an enemy that's completely different than other light gun games. And Time Crisis is the light gun game that really feels the most unique. Like you play a lot of light gun games can combine together. Light Time Crisis is one that it's like, nah, it's this is Time Crisis.
yeah. I think just that the pedal, how it.
Yeah.
I mean, it is still a light gun game, but it
Hmm.
is. I mean, in my opinion, it is kind of revolutionary just in terms of how adding this one little section is not only kind of more realistic. You feel like you're actually in combat. You're ducking behind cover,
Hmm.
um, but also just in terms of how fun it is, where it's kind of giving you
Yeah.
something to do. And it gives you not only that, but it gives you a second to kind of catch your breath and go back in it. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I think Time Crisis is really cool.
And something else too that I was kind of thinking about is so Time Crisis 1 came out in 1998 if I'm not mistaken, and it was oh, I'm sorry, it was came out in 10 Crisis 1 came out in 1995, and even the game I always think of when it comes to Time Crisis is not any arcade games, but actually Gears of War, because cover is so important in both of those games. That's like a major part of the game's identity. And I was thinking like it's really interesting how cover really wasn't used as like a major point in games and like home games during that time. But Time Crisis built cover so much into its identity. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, now it's easy to look at. We'll just add cover because every game has a cover system. But you're right.
Hmm.
In terms of an arcade, adding it to a light gun game, um, even just thinking about how you could do that, well, we just add a new piece of hardware.
Hmm.
Yeah, like I said, I think it's revolutionary.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe we wouldn't have like all these games with a cover system if it wasn't for Time Crisis, a game in an arcade that actually was surprisingly innovative.
Yeah, I think arcade games can generally be pretty innovative.
I think that yeah, but light gun game, like
Like gun, you're
how
right. Light gun games
how
are, yeah, they can only be so. At the end of the day, you're pointing it at a screen and firing a trigger. Yeah, that's fair.
yeah, like fighting games, especially in their arcades, like oh yeah, they can be they're super innovative, but yeah, like most other genres weren't. I feel like it is kind of difficult to say how innovative, but light guns especially.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Nope.
oh sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I honestly this is one I don't really have a whole lot to say about, which is why I really haven't said a whole lot. But do you think it should make it on the list?
I I think Time Crisis 3 should be pretty like high or low depending on where it is on the list just because I feel like it is the perfect encapsulation of the light gun genre. Like I think my favorite might be Time Crisis 2, but I feel like Time Crisis 3, the only reason why I think I like Time Crisis 2 more is because I played Time Crisis 3 so much. Um and it was like Time Crisis 3, it's like the pinnacle of the light gun genre. It's a normal light gun game, but it also has the pedal, so it makes gameplay unique. The way they implement power ups by having them just you automatically have them, but you can get ammo after killing enemies. That was a really cool way of including them and made them stand out a little different than it's like, hey, if you shoot that barrel, you get the machine gun. So yeah, I think Time Crisis 3 should probably be in there.
Yeah, I agree. I'm fine with Time Crisis 2 or 3. I personally think co-op is a bigger uh like
Innovate. It's more.
innovation,
Yeah.
yeah, than 3. So I'm fine if you want me to put 2 on there.
No,
I'm fine with 2. You think 3?
I think 3 because something we always talk about is innovation versus perfection, and I feel like even though I agree co-op is more of an innovation, something that you said as an argument is, what would you tell people when we talk about Guitar Hero versus Guitar Freak? You're like, what would you tell people to play if they were
Yeah.
American? I think, what would you tell people to play? Time Crisis 3 or Time Crisis 2?
Probably 3, but 3 is also
Yeah.
harder, I think.
I don't think so. I mean, 3 starts off really cool. Your guys are fishing on a boat, and then the boat explodes, and then you go to the island. And
Yeah.
plus 3
No,
also, like,
I'm fine with either. Like I said, if
yeah,
you I could go either way.
I think that for you, I know you're more focused on perfection than innovation, and I think that's why we got to go with 3.
Okay. Then I'm fine with that. Do you want to just pop it at
Yep.
100 and then we'll move Star Fox 64 and Doom up a slot?
Um, should we? I was thinking maybe like 92.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. Just because it is a like this is the perfection of the light gun genre. So I was like, yeah, 92. It's not a giant genre, but yeah, if you're at an arcade and you see it,
Yeah, you
definitely
should be playing
I yeah, if I ever have an opportunity to play Time Crisis, I always play it. Doesn't
yeah,
matter
from
which
that
version,
arcade.
but
Yep.
yeah.
I
I
agree. Cool.
Yep. Alrighty then.
All right, Time Crisis is on the list now, so I don't forget. I'm gonna spin the wheel.
Mm-hmm. Ba-da-ba-da-bop, bop, ba-da, 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 bop,
Oh
ba-da, bop.
man. Okay. Switch, PS5, PC, Series X.
Okay.
So let's spin the platform. PC. So we're doing a PC game from basically current gen PC game.
Alright, I know what I'm doing. I know what my vote's for.
What?
Um, that is something that I don't know if you will agree or not, so I'm not going to tell you, and the audience will just have to wait till we maybe do it next episode.
Okay.
Yep.
Um. All right. Cool. Then we'll do a PC game next week. Noah,
Yep.
what have you been playing?
I have finally beaten Armored Core 6, and so
Nice.
now I'm going to probably mostly play Yakuza 7, maybe a bit of Street Fighter 2 as well. And
Nice.
yeah, I liked Armored Core, but it was a game that I felt like it was one of those things where I was like, okay, I just kind of want to get to the end of it. And wasn't a huge fan of the last boss, but yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, I love that game. I
Yeah.
I just that game is so good. Was there anything else you want to say about anything you were playing or plan to play?
Not really. I'm debating about playing through the Guardians of the Galaxy game, but playing through it in Japanese just because it was such a fun game and I want to replay it again.
As
And
the
I was like,
devs
oh,
intended.
yep, as the devs intended, playing the original Japanese version. But no, it was a great game and I've been wanting to play it for a while. I was like, oh yeah, maybe I'll play it in Japanese and that'll be another way to study.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
Hmm.
My fiance played it like fairly recently, like within the last like 6 months, and so that was kind of a good way for me to relive it without dedicating
Yeah,
15 hours or
that
so.
God, that game was so underrated. It was
I think it's pretty adequately rated. I think
what?
now it
Oh,
is.
oh, okay.
Now it is. I think it was underrated when it came out, but I think most people have realized it is a really good game. And
Yeah.
I think
Well,
now its reputation is where it should be.
well, like the one line in the game that really stands out to me is like they're like, "Man, we really need money." It's like, well, we could always ask Fing Fang Boom for money. It was like, you that giant like 50-story tall dragon. I don't think so. Well, why don't we sell some of Gunora's knickknacks? It's like, if you touch my knickknacks, then we will like I'll kill you. It's like, what if instead we combine the ideas? Ah, sell the knickknacks to Ping Fang Boom. An excellent idea.
Yeah, no, the whole
Like
game's good.
that.
The writing is the writing. I think my thing is the writing is underrated. The gameplay is a
Yeah,
little overrated. The gameplay gets a
that's
little
fair.
long, but the writing is fantastic, and that's why I wish the game was just a little bit shorter
Yeah.
because I think it could
I
have had a little bit tighter
I
plot.
also wish the game was more difficult because the huddle system was the huddle system is great. The huddling in the game is awesome, but I would always be like, "Oh, well, I'm not this part isn't that difficult, so I'm going to save my huddle for like a hard part." And because there never really was any hard parts, I just never used it. It's like that's the best part of the game is
Yeah,
when the music plays.
yeah, no,
So,
I agree. Cool.
mhm,
Um, I finally beat Persona 3 Reload today. I'm a little irritated for several reasons.
mhm,
One, when I got so I pretty much accepted when I was playing the game I'm not going to get max out all social links.
mhm,
Um, but then when I got to the last month, I was like, oh, I'm actually like I'm not close enough to do all of them, but I'm close enough to finish up these two. I had just enough days to do these two.
mhm.
But then one of the days after school is like a story event. So I was like, fuck, I missed a sec. Like, I almost got all the social links but two, and I'm missing one by a day. But then there was another day that was also taken up, and I was like, okay, I feel better about that since I was now two away instead of one away. But yeah, I mean, really, really good game. Now that I've finished it, I really like the plot. I like the way kind of all the characters I think do a better job of sort of interweaving with the main plot. They all have a reason they're there, except for the like Oracle type character.
Mhm.
She's her plot's a little separated from everybody else, but
She's like a robot, right?
no,
Oh,
that's that's just like a main party member.
oh, gotcha.
But yeah, so a really good game. Music's great, characters are great, plot's really good. I like kind of the themes of the game. Um,
I like the dog.
the dog is actually great.
Yeah.
There's a great moment where the robot is with the dog, and the robot says "shake," and the dog just like sticks both its paws on her face, and she's like noted that "shake" means sticking both paws on face. um, but yeah,
I
I
guess
really like all the characters, and it was a really good game.
Yeah, I guess there's like this video that's pretty funny. Isn't there a guy who wears a beanie who's kind of like the badass one?
The
Yeah,
cool
the cool
guy.
guy. There's like a video, it's like from the anime. I don't know if it's from the game also, but he's like cooking and he like gives like the meat to the dog and he starts like praising him and he looks and it shows like the Aegis, the robot, is like just staring at him like through the doorway and it plays that song that's like baby 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 baby
The
baby.
combat song, that's pretty
Yeah.
good. The other kind of minor complaint is that I summoned, I don't know why, but today when I was like, I'm going to beat the game, I decided to just get really into it. And so I just spent like an hour or so fusing a bunch of like the top personas, including the two that give you the most powerful like special in the game.
Mhm.
Um, and I used it on the final boss, like on his final phase, thinking it would just do a lot of damage, but it actually ended up one-shotting him. So I was like, oh,
Well, that's cool.
okay. But I ended up like beating the Reaper. I didn't beat kind of the super boss, but
Uh-huh.
I did
Do
a
you
lot, and
think you'll go back and beat the super boss?
I might. I kind of want to. I'm close to a platinum. Basically, I'd
I mean,
have
you
to.
one-shotted the the main boss, right? So it seems like you're kind of in a good position to.
No, because the only reason I was able to. So there's two super bosses. One is the Reaper,
Uh-huh.
um, who's also in Persona 5. I beat the Reaper, and that gave me like I grew like 10 levels from beating the Reaper, and I think that that's why I
Mhm.
was a little overpowered for the final boss. But
Mhm.
the super boss is even tougher than Reaper.
Okay, gotcha.
He's yeah. I looked up like kind of how that fight
Is
works,
the
and it sounds awful.
oh really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so maybe I might go in and give it a shot and see if I can. But honestly, I'm more likely to do New Game Plus, wrap up the social links I didn't do, fuse the um like final persona, which
Mhm.
you have to do all social links to get, because then that would be the platinum, and that's kind of what I'm more interested in, probably at this point anyway. But we'll see. I'll see how the expansion passes, and if it's pretty good, then maybe I will jump back into the game. And then
Got
other
it.
than that, I'm going through Unicorn Overlord, which I'm really liking. Um, I like a lot of the characters. I'm like 75% of the way done with the game, and I'm hoping to maybe beat that this week or next week in
Nice.
time for Paper Mario,
Mhm.
which I
God, I
guess
hate
is,
Mario.
I know you do. All right, Noah, what are you plugging today? And then let's get out of here.
So something, Simon, how important is the quality of your clothes to you?
Not as important as it should be.
Oh, okay, for me, I really like really high, really upper quality, and in fact, I might even say I really like supreme quality, and there is no store that has more Supreme clothes than the Supreme store in Nagoya. So, if you love Supreme clothing like I do, Supreme brand clothing like I do, head on down to the Nagoya Supreme store.
Did you actually buy Supreme stuff?
I
Yeah.
thought the question you would ask is, does Nagoya actually have a Supreme store?
Well, does it?
Yes, it does.
Did you buy anything from there?
I bought a brick.
That's kind of what I expected.
Yeah, you ever seen the Supreme branded brick?
No, I didn't know that was a thing.
Oh yeah, there's a you can buy a brick and the brick says Supreme on it.
That's how much is it? I don't want to
Supreme?
know. I don't
Yeah.
want to know how much it is. Probably way too expensive. All right.
According to eBay, $800. Hey, I mean, you build a house brick by brick. You want a Supreme house, you need the Supreme bricks.
I guess so. I just wouldn't buy a Supreme house.
Oh man, this guy broke his Supreme brick.
Oh well, it's Darwinism at work. Thank you to Pecan Pie on Upbeat for our intro and outro songs. Thank you to Zach Robinson for our logo. If you liked this, please follow and or subscribe, and consider leaving a rating and or review so more people can find us. You can find other episodes of this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube, where you can also follow us there. If you want to send us an email, you can do so at gamedisc.podcast@gmail.com, and we will read it on the air. You can send us questions, suggestions, or anything you want, and we will be back next week where we talk about a current gen PC game. Goodbye.
Bye. Oh man, this is a lot cheaper than I was expecting. You can get 4 socks for only $44.
Jesus Christ. 4 socks or 4 pairs of socks?
Yeah, 4 socks. Hey, you can get a 5-gallon bucket for only $40. I want the Supreme bucket.